Hey, everybody, welcome to this week's webinar. Now, last week, I just want to kind of say I talked a lot about some things that were going on that are showing divisions within the country. I'm going to continue on with that theme and talk about opportunities and disasters that are happening. And I'm going to be honestly truthful with you here. This may be one of the most important sessions you're going to hear this year, because I'm going to show you some graphs and charts, and guys, you got to hear this. This is important. So, Mike, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
Okay.
I want to welcome Mike Green,
Thank you.
my sidekick. And
why don't I fill some of the awkward silence while you're trying to figure out how to share your screen with everybody, so that it seems like we have a seamless transition and we go right from microphone from me right to you, because you'll be ready. You're still not ready.
Do I have stuff on my shirt again? Because, Mike used to say, you got old man stuff on your front. Did you like eat cereal or something? And just
well, we should mention that you do have that spot on your lip, and you have.
It was a shaving incident. Okay,
right?
It was a shaving incident.
All right, I see your screen. You're ready, Scott.
This is a rough crowd. I can tell you that much right off.
It is.
But Mike and I have a deep affection for each other.
Well,
I'm not talking about that kind of affection. I mean, we're close. We're good friends. All right. So,
all right, we're still having. I see your. Okay, there we go.
Okay, now
we're getting there.
I'm going to call this session demographic disaster, because there are some stuff that is coming, and it is really bad. Okay, now this is a census year, 2020. 10-year census comes along, and what happens is all of a sudden everybody's going to start saying really scary things about what's happening in the American electorate. Now, part of the reason is because everybody just kind of takes demographics for granted, and all of a sudden they wake up one day and they go, holy cats, this is serious. And that's kind of what's happening right now, because as we're looking at things, the changes that are beginning to occur are, well, frankly, people aren't prepared for them. Now, the screen will fix itself in just a second, but I'm just going to say things are really, so things were hot before. Now things are getting scary, and I'm talking about in the Norse tradition, and I'm talking about Scandinavia. They didn't consider hell to be hot. They considered it to be cold, really, really cold. So here's the stuff that I want you to know. I'm taking this from some stuff that was written by Wendell Cox, who's a demographer, and he works for New Geography. He had an article in New Geography, the website. He works for Demographia. And no, it's not associated with any profession. This is a serious demographic site and serious demographic figures. Now, here's what he's saying that I want you to know. The U.S. growth rate has declined by about a third to 0.48%. It went from 0.72% in 2014. The decline is significant. Now, the decline comes for two reasons. One is what they call a natural population decline, and that means the birth rate is down. When they're not, and they always measure births to deaths. Now, people are living longer, that is true, but the number of births is not keeping up. And in fact, the number of births since Barack Obama and that big recession has been kind of significant. Now, remember, between 2000 and 2010, the growth rate was about 0.93. And people were saying, my hair's on fire, we're all going to die because we have just way too many people. Okay, I can kind of get with the idea that Malthusians, and that's what you call people who are crazy about too much growth, how they kind of get out of whack. But the reality is we're not having too many people, we're having too few, and that's having an odd effect. Now, it isn't as though the entire United States is having a decline. It's that certain parts of it are having very big declines, and other places are kind of doing okay. But certainly the growth rate throughout the entire nation is kind of low. Now, the natural growth rate, births minus deaths, 2011 was 1,461,000. 2019, it went down to 957,000. Now you may say, oh, well, but that's okay because, there are lots of immigrants in the country. We all know that. Well, here's the deal. The immigration rate, the international immigration rate, went down from 774,000 in 2011 to 2019's 595. It was just last year that we had all these people, or it was 2 years ago, all these people coming to the United States borders, and we got to be let in because we're starving in our own countries. Well, all that group of people that primarily came from South and Central America, mainly Central America. Believe it or not, those people are not just hanging out at the borders now, they're gone. And so the international birth rate has gone down. So when all these people go to other nations and they fight to get into the United States, well, that in a way helps the United States. It's true, we pay a lot for the services that those people provide if they're not working. But the long and the short of it is, there aren't as many people as there used to be. If we look at countries that come in Asia, yeah, they're coming, but they're older and they're not having much of a birth rate. So what happens as soon as immigrants come to the United States, they take upon themselves the same rates of birth that the United States has had in its resident population for a long time. So they're not having high births. It used to be assumed that a Mexican woman who had 8 children, which by the way was the average back in the 1970s and 80s, that she would continue with that. Well, right now, her birth rate after she comes to the United States is pretty low. And that's kind of the issue. Now, how bad is it? I'm going to show you a little graph right here. And here's the thing. The population never does a huge jump. It's always a little more gradual. And because it's gradual, a lot of people don't notice it. But the slower growth is something that's having an effect. Now, if you look at the red triangles on the top of this chart, those are the births. The deaths are going to be the little squares. Now, death rates, hopefully, are not going to catch up with birth rates because then we have a net negative population. But it's getting so that, yeah, it's getting a little bit desperate. And as you look at that bottom bar chart where the bars are going up, that's the real scary part, because what it shows is the rates of growth are declining. Now, let me go on. It isn't doing this everywhere at the same rate. But if you look at California, the rate of decline is becoming really scary. Now, remember how I said we went down by about a third, 33%, to 0.48% from 0.2% in 2014. I know you're yawning because of statistics. Sorry. But if you look at the natural growth rate and decline in California, in that same period of time, rather than declining by 33%, it's gone down by 85% decline only in the rate. It doesn't mean that there's 85% the number of people, but the rate has declined down in California to 0.13%. Now, the long-term impact of that is going to be felt throughout the United States, not just in one particular narrow area. Now, let me just explain rather dramatically with another chart. This one right here is really one that frightens me very much. Now, let me see if I can make this a little larger and therefore have it easier to read. As you can see, the U.S. versus California growth is the issue. Back in about 2015 to 16, the United States was growing, and then hit a decline back in about 2016, 17. That's when, it should have picked up after the recession. But California's rate of decline is the issue. It's just how fast that it has gone down that is scaring the heck out of everybody. It was always likely that California, because of its large immigrant population, was growing at a faster rate than the rest of the United States. Now, not only have those roles reversed, it is going down dramatically. And so if you look at the growth rate in California, people are going, what are we going to do? Now, some people are happy about a decreased population, but I have to remind you of a simple fact. When you pay taxes, you're contributing to the general fund or the fisc. And so what happens with Social Security, there aren't as many people to pay it. California has a surplus this year. It's made a budget surplus, and people have always generally assumed in Sacramento, California, that that's going to continue. It isn't. And just within a year, the likelihood is that California is going to begin to lose income pretty significantly. Now, let's look at the regions of the country, and this is where the issue comes up for why you watch this webinar. This is net domestic migration, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, 2010 to 2019. What it really shows is the Northeast is the one that is really getting to be scary. The states of New York, New Jersey, Maine, Connecticut, New Hampshire, they're all having a significant loss. Now, if you'll notice the West, which includes California, you're going, yeah, it's not so bad. But that's because the West has a few states like Idaho, Arizona, Colorado, Texas, and those are the places that are considered pretty healthy demographically. And so they're fighting the two trends. And that's why the West doesn't appear to be doing better. It's because some of the states are doing so much worse and so much better. It's kind of evening out a little bit. If you were to look at the entire regions of the United States, the South, the southern states are the ones that are doing really very well. And that's because of both birth rate, which is the natural increase, and also the population of immigrants is moving to the South. That's where the jobs are. That's where you can buy a house for very little. Now, this is by actual number of residents. If we go and look at the percentage, the numbers aren't going to be that different from what you see by the actual numbers. The point is they're consistent and they're changing at about the same rate. Now, let me go on to some other states to kind of show you what the heck is going on here. If you were to look at the 10 leading population gaining states, and this is by raw numbers, how many are actually getting more people? The state that is getting most people is Texas. And they're getting them, a lot of them. And some people are going, well, why? But why? And I bring this up a lot. It's because the tax rate is so low. The cost of living is low. There are lots of businesses that have moved there because you can set up a business, a large business with lots of employees and do very well. Right next to that is Florida. Now, Florida, believe it or not, was actually a little bit scary back in the 80s and into the 90s. People were saying, that because of the housing devaluation, it was suffering. But that has reversed itself for one primary reason. Florida has decided we are not going to be charging an arm and a leg for taxes. They have no state income tax. Do you think that matters to people? Well, if you look at just the raw numbers, yeah, it matters a lot. Now, so far, everything on this chart is pretty rosy. If you look at Arizona, North Carolina, Georgia, those are the states that are showing a large gross population increase, not by percentage, but by raw numbers. Now, the benefit of having lots of raw numbers, if you're a big employer, these are the states to head to because they're going to have so many more people to hire. Now, let's say that you happen to be, a doctor, and you're trying to figure out where should we go. This chart tells you something else about the area that shows areas of promise. This is what states are growing by percentage. Now, Idaho is not growing nearly as fast as Texas and Florida, but it is growing by percentage very quickly. So let's say that you want to set up a practice from scratch. Where can I find a lot of people that don't already have a doctor that are new to the area? These are the states that you want to consider for a scratch practice. If you're going to buy a practice, you'd consider going to these states. They're going to be the ones that have a little easier time. I hope I haven't lost you on that. So, purchase a practice, start up a practice. Um, but you'll notice, by the way, that Texas, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, they're still on the chart. It's just because they already have such a large population, they're not growing by percentage. But if you really are smart, you'll consider those places like Western Idaho and Northern and Southern Nevada. You don't want to go to the east side of Nevada, the Wendover side. There's just not as much population growth. Arizona is growing primarily because, well, and the same thing with Nevada, California is really not doing so well. Utah is growing for two reasons. It's growing because a lot of people coming from other states, including Washington State and also California, but Utah has the highest natural increase in population. In other words, its birth rate is doing well. Texas, by the way, is doing well also because of both. People are moving there from other states and they're having a high birth rate. So I think you get the point. When we start talking about why an area is growing, that's where you can make plans and do a little investigative work to say, is this a right place for me? Now, I'm going to stop right here and explain something to you. A lot of people will say, I want to know, how are you like other demographic companies? Well, other demographic companies are going to depend upon you to tell them this, what is this area in Butte, Montana? Is it good or bad? Is there population or too much competition or too little, whatever? We take a little different approach. We're more proactive. So if you say, I am looking for this kind of an area, or I'm looking for a population that will fit this model, that's where we can help you, and they can't, because they don't have the diagnostic tools to be able to project where are these places doing well and where are they not. The other thing that they often don't know is the differences between one location's competition and another. Yeah, they'll have the ratio, but they won't be able to say where are all the corporate practices. They'll just be able to say there are so many dentists practicing in this area, or so many physicians are now in this kind of clinical situation, or here are so many veterinarians or optometrists. We do that. So we will look at what kind of profession you're in and project where everybody's going and how good or bad it's going to be in the future. Now, I also have to say something else. There's some of these locations that look terrible, not all terrible, just some of the places within the states are terrible. So let me give you an example. These are regional trends. These are where, in fact, the changes are negative for you. Now, if you're looking just at the population percentages, West Virginia is doing badly. Okay, everybody's leaving. Why are they leaving? It's primarily jobs, poverty, a little bit of crime. Cost of living is a little higher than what people are earning well, but I don't think that's permanent. Remember, there was a war on coal for a long time, which was a really big deal in West Virginia and also on manufacturing. It's kind of coming back. If you look at the other state next to it that's not doing so well, it's Alaska. A lot of people don't recognize the fact that Alaska doesn't have that much work anymore, and there's no manufacturing base at all. There is an energy base, however. So almost all the growth in Alaska is centered on maybe 2 or 3 cities. Now, the reason you use a service like ours is because we want to say, if you want to go to Alaska, here's where to go in Alaska. We just don't say, oh yeah, Alaska, it's dead. It's not. Parts of it are going to be a challenge. If you go to Illinois, the march for people to leave Illinois and New York is huge. There's a lot of people who are trying to get out. And remember, this is by percentage. With such a large population, that's a lot of people looking for the exits. Do I think that Illinois is completely dead? It is not. There are some places in Illinois that are doing pretty darn well, particularly in southern Illinois. If you look outside of the Chicagoland area or look to the west of Chicagoland, Illinois has some good places, and that's where you use our services to help you. The same thing is going to be true of New York State. There are some places that are pretty not too good, other places that are doing dynamite. Now, just want to say something quick. If you happen to be really thinking about going to New York State, you got to find a good broker. The brokers can tell you where the practices are for sale that will give you the best leg up. We can even recommend brokers for you. And we've got a couple in New York that are just so good. So don't think, oh, no, we can't make it in New York. You can. It's not as easy, perhaps, because there are not as many people moving there, and there are a lot of people moving out. Hawaii, by the way, as I featured a few weeks ago, is really kind of a trouble place. Trouble in paradise for sure. So this is the stuff I want you to be aware of. Don't just simply say, well, I guess I know. You don't. That's where you get someone who's an expert to help you. Now, this is the state that is showing the actual numbers of people that are moving out, not by percentage. On the other chart, you'll notice that California really doesn't much come up because by percentage, it isn't that big a deal. However, by actual numbers, that's where it becomes a problem. That's why California and New York are so frightened, because their tax bases are going down. And someone's going to have to get paying for those taxes. And as you may have heard, it looks like there's a bit of a movement to get rid of Prop 13 in California, which is a property tax change. A lot of people on the internet are saying, no, it won't affect property taxes at all. It's going to affect property taxes. Now, the nation's population growth is dropping fast. The Northeast and the Midwest trend to the South and West. This has been going on since World War II. It's just continuing. So the Northeast, Midwest has been having challenges. You need to cherry pick where you're going. California is looking a lot more like a Northeast state in terms of its growth and decline statistics. Now, moving on, you can find places to practice and still thrive. You just have to know where to look. Now, I wish I could tell you that there is an easy way to do this. There isn't. In our state briefings, I look at every city and county in a given state, and I will tell you what the growth or reduction population is per county. The reason that's important is because sometimes a county may look bad because it's associated with the state, but in fact, that individual county may be doing better than you think. That's why you have to look for the segments within the states rather than simply say, yeah, this is going to be good or this is going to be bad based on what's happening in the whole state. I hope that makes sense. Now look, if you want to know what the right answer for you is, that's what we're here for. A lot of times people will say, look, in fact, I just got a call this morning. A guy wants to know, in this state, can I make it in this location? Is it going to be good relative to everything else? And in his particular answer, yeah, wildly, it's going to be wonderful. But it is not always an easy answer. You got to be able to keep up on data on much more smaller units of time than 10 years. You got to be sometimes looking at a month or 6 months. Mike, what do you think about all this?
I think you're a brilliant man, first off.
Thank you.
And, the thing I really liked that you said, and I realize that it's an extreme example, but you can't just say Alaska's not doing well. You can't even say that Mississippi's not doing well or West Virginia's not doing well, because there are it's far more detailed than that. And what defines well? Are we just talking economically? Are we talking about the nature of the people that are moving there? Are we talking about the dental or the doctor or the veterinary competition ratios? Like, what is well? And so I think that's where it is so important that you get the deeper answer about a particular area, because you could be in a state that is being taxed out of oblivion and is really struggling, but there may be a pocket within that state that is a tremendous opportunity. And if you don't pull in the experts, so to speak, you're not going to be able to discover that, and you may miss a fantastic opportunity. And there's many, I think almost daily, we have that experience where we're looking at an area that, everybody knows that West Virginia people are moving out, but there are some spots there that if you're from that area, if your heart's set on West Virginia, that you probably could be quite successful. So there
Right.
really is not, it's never a short answer. And if you've seen our reports, you know that we don't give short answers. We give very detailed answers and some in-depth analytics on the reasons why those answers are going to affect your practice decision.
I just have to say one quick thing. We got a call the other day from a guy who brought us a report by one of our competitors in Delaware. And he said, they are saying I can't make it in Delaware. They're saying I can't. Yeah, your podcast said maybe I can. And I had to explain to him why the other company were getting false positives and
Right.
worse, false negatives on the locations that they're looking. Doesn't mean they're bad people, but I'm saying the statistical modeling they have is going to depend a lot on what you're trying to offer. So if you're a veterinarian, even in a state that is not growing well, that can be a dynamite location to go to.
Sure.
If you happen to be doing dental implants, some locations that don't show growth could be fantastic, because sometimes who you're trying to reach is a minority within the population. So I got to say, only trust people who know something about your profession, because they'll know enough about what you're offering to be able to give you good recommendations. So anyway, you guys, please take a look at our telephone consultation page. We on drdemographics.com. We have all kinds of stuff that we offer on our website that is just free and really good stuff. Our job is to inform and to help you to find the perfect place to put a practice. Mike, thanks again. I'm afraid we have to run. Take care.